Hardcore leftism might be going into retirement with Joe Biden. Incoming border czar Tom Homan declares war on Chicago's sanctuary city status. And Pete Hegseth will have his work cut out for him to de-woke the military. We have those stories and so much more. Blaze News Tonight starts right now. Welcome to the chaos. I'm Jill Savage. Today is Tuesday, December 10th. And the question everybody's asking is, where is Joe Biden? Even Politico has noticed his absence since Donald Trump's win on November 5th, with one of their sources claiming that there is virtually no leadership from the White House. Here to break it down for us is Blaze News Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson and Chris Bedford. He's our senior politics editor. And Bedford, I mean, we look at it and we always wonder where Joe has been, yet the question remains right now, where is he?
Yeah, that's always been the question. And that's funny that you mentioned that Politico finally noticed this. And I think the reason for that is because Democrats are finally willing to talk about it. There's been a complete absence of leadership in the White House for 4 years now. I mean, Colorado, where the Obamas live, has been a much bigger hub of activity. And Barack Obama himself reportedly has free reign in the White House, or at least did before this whole primary thing ended up happening to Joe Biden. He's kind of checked out. The last footage that we've seen of him was fine footage for an elderly relative. We've all gone through this with people who we love who start to fade away and don't quite represent themselves the way that they used to. Joe Biden, and now at least people are finally willing to admit, has long been there as a president. And it's been kind of shocking to see, though, it's not just that Joe Biden is absent. It's that the new president-elect, not his vice president, but former President Donald Trump, seems to be everywhere at the exact same time. I mean, he's going over to France. He's going to the grand, beautiful, really moving reopening of Notre Dame. Royalty from England, people who used to snub their nose at him, Canadian prime ministers, or I guess governors, as he would call them, French leaders, they are bustling to get into shaking his hand. When people wonder what American policy is, they're much more interested. They'd be much better suited talking to Donald Trump, the mean old orange man. They would be talking to the sitting president of the United States if they're even able to get him on the line. And more, it seems like they're not. I mean, Joe Biden is someone who, on one hand, poured his life into the Democratic Party, but on the other hand, poured his life into himself. It was a deal that he made. He was willing to shift his beliefs. He was willing to shift his stances. He was willing to sometimes get pushed to the back of the line by Democrats who never actually wanted him to be president until they essentially were forced to by how crazy the rest of the slate was in order to defeat Donald Trump. They always kind of pushed him down. And now he doesn't seem to feel any of that loyalty back to the Democratic Party. I think that's reasonable. They stabbed him in the back. They pushed him back. Barack Obama said, no, step aside. It's Hillary Clinton. Then they said, fine, step in. And then Barack Obama came back and said, you know what, step aside. It's actually Kamala Harris, even though me and Michelle don't like her. He doesn't feel like he owes them anything. He's not going to do anything anymore to help them. He's certainly not an ideologue at the same level. Well, he's actually far more left-wing than he's ever gotten credit for. The true Joe Biden is coming out. And this is kind of one of the untold stories of D.C. that people don't like to talk about, is that consoler-in-chief, Joe Biden's kind of nickname and the way he's had a reputation, is as accurate a reputation as John F. Kennedy family man. It is complete and total propaganda. It is a lie. It started to come out when he was kind of losing it at the end. They say, no, trust me, we're afraid to go into the Oval Office with him. He curses at us. He yells at us. And then they would add the lie. He's sharp as a tack. Well, the first part is actually true. It has always been true about Joe Biden. Despite the fact that he's able to, like a good politician, a classic old school politician, affect that warmth and affect that I understand your suffering. The reality is a mean man and someone who is not giving back the love right now to the Democratic Party. And honestly, I kind of understand that. The only problem is he is still the most powerful person on the planet, at least on paper. And that creates a vacuum, a very dangerous vacuum for this country.
It really is unbelievable the juxtaposition between, Trump and his so-called dominating handshake with the French President Macron. People freaking out about it really cracks me up. And the reception that Trump is getting from world leaders. I mean, we really don't even need to ask you about that. Everyone's seen it. So they've seen him act as president, since really a few weeks after he won. He's already in the lead. I think what you said is very perceptive, and it speaks to something very deep, I think, that's lurking here. And that is, where is the leadership in the Democratic Party, period? And even deeper than that, it seems to me that there's a generational, or maybe better said, an establishment lack of leadership writ large, Republican and Democrat, where there's just a black hole right now of nothing. And I say this and hand it over to you. I mean, it was at least in the background, you thought maybe Barack Obama was, passive aggressively ruling us all in some way, right? I mean, there was some, and he was the professional, but, he came out, looked like an idiot, screaming at everyone to vote for Kamala. Kamala's a non-entity. Biden's absent. There is no one minding the store as far as I can tell. And what you just said was, to the extent that there is, it's a sad, old, selfish man who at the end of the day hates everyone and has no friends but himself. Am I hearing this right?
Yeah, and the first thing to talk about is that handshake. I think there's a little backstory there. The first time that he met Macron, this kind of like little guy, he shook his hand and he squeezed Donald Trump's hand in the way that someone does, like not a firm handshake, but a weird one. And reportedly, Trump turned to his aides afterwards and said, "What the heck was that? Was he trying to intimidate me? This is so silly." So now he comes back. He's like, "Hey, by the way, guess who's back in town?" And he wants to give him an overbearing handshake. Like, "Hey, you're one of those people who tries to squeeze people's hands like it makes you tough. Well, I'm the president now, and you're kind of on your way out." So that's true. And with the Republicans and Democrats, you're entirely correct. I mean, Mitch McConnell, who I've got a piece coming about tomorrow, which his secret war against Donald Trump, we can get into more details later, had a medical emergency and fell today. Republicans and Democrats are largely rudderless. It's been really wonderful to see J.D. Vance, probably the only actually impactful and important vice presidential debate I can remember, because it established him as a really serious character and a future for the GOP. He's someone who really stands out, but the rest of the Senate Republicans are trying to fight against Donald Trump. People like Joni Ernst, who I know now has completely gone back on that and said, "Oh, never mind." They have to kind of fall in line a little bit, but the benches of political talent on both sides seem fairly weak, seem fairly shallow. And there's article after article coming out here in D.C. about who's going to be in charge of the Democratic Party, but the question is also who's in charge of what. I mean, they're fighting over scraps. And honestly, when you're trying to have a reshaping of a party, best time to actually do that is when you're not in power, when people haven't won, when there's massive losses handed to a party. That's a time for different people with different competing visions to really step forward in kind of a vacuum where it doesn't have a huge impact on actual American governance, to try and figure out who's in charge. But for a decade now, it has been octogenarians white knuckle gripping onto power in a way that is embarrassing. I mean, during the Reagan years, they talked about how old the Soviet leadership was. I think he went through 3 Soviet premiers because they kept on dying in office when he was president. They were all, granted, they lived hard lives, a lot of vodka, but they were all younger than the leadership of the Democratic and Republican parties in the Senate. Now, things have started to change a little bit, shift. John Thune is obviously a much younger person. The Democrats have a younger Hakeem Jeffries in the House of Representatives. But do people actually think that he's the center of power? Certainly, D.C.'s political press hasn't reacted as such. Certainly, D.C.'s Democrats still react to Nancy Pelosi, who's white-knuckling, gripping onto power. But It's left a void, it's left a vacuum, and into that, Trump, so different from 2016 and so different from 2020, has come with an operation that, well, it still does have a lot of hangers on. It still does have a lot of grifters. All political operations do, especially outsider ones, which Trump still was, even in this last primary. There are some very serious, very policy focused people who've been working closely with this transition team who are going to actually try to make a difference. And it reminds me of probably 8 years ago or so, talking to our friend David Azarad and saying, well, I mean, the conservatives have been on the retreat for centuries. It's part of the deal when you're trying to conserve things, you're trying to keep things standard, to try to protect Western civilization, is there's always going to be an ebb. You're always going to get the natural flow that takes away from the structure that eats at the base of what you're trying to defend. But I said, even Russell Kirk tried to name his book, The Conservative Mind, The Conservative Retreat, because it has been a long war of attrition that liberals have generally been winning. But now I actually have a little bit of a white pill, a little bit of hope. It seems like the left wing is collapsing in on itself. They have overreached to such an extent that they have severely damaged their cause. And as Azarad told me, the difference here is that conservatives have only begun just now, 8 years ago, to fight, to really fight, not simply to try and write nice books about things, not simply trying to talk to each other, but to really push back against the left-wing state, to really push back against their ideas. Like we talked about last night, the idea that birthright citizenship and these anchor babies that have long been an issue in American politics, have long made a farce of American citizenship, is actually under discussion. Well, that probably won't actually be changed, is a sign of a complete mindset shift of people who are on the right and the American right, Republicans, conservative, populists, nationalists of all stripes, coming forward and saying, not only are we going to just not tinker around the edges, cut 1% here, cut 2% there, we're actually going to try and turn the tide. And you're seeing that not just in politics, but before that, in the culture, in comedy, in movies, in television. It's really kind of wild.
Well, in the 60 seconds that we have left with you, AOC, she's one of the wannabe leaders of the Democratic Party. She went viral for removing her pronouns from her bio. And this is something that we are talking about on a television program. But here we are, because it does look like, again, it happened in May, but it's now making headlines. But it looks like it's a sign of the woke agenda finally going away.
I think it is. It's something that used to be. The woke agenda is interesting. It's religious in a way. That's why, while conservative churches and Orthodox churches and Catholic churches get their pews often rather filled up on Sunday, the liberals get their marches filled up because that is their version of church. But unlike a lot of these other actual real religions, wokeism doesn't have very many martyrs, people who are actually willing to sacrifice their careers and sacrifice their ability to get ahead based on its tenets. They use it. It's like tools. It's like hooks for an ice climber to try and get up something just so they can take it. But when there's actual blowback, when people say, you know what, that's actually really stupid, the moral panic is over. The moral crusade is over. When you have Black Lives Matter spokesman who used to be able to make governors and mayors kneel and FBI agents kneel before them, now they're out in the street yelling for militias and no one's even listening. Well, it shows you that that moral crusade is over, that they have used their time, they've used their energy. People aren't afraid of them anymore. Companies aren't really paying attention to the mobs. They would get 20 people saying mean things to them on Twitter, and they would change corporate policy to be extremely left-wing and antagonistic towards Christians and Americans. You're not seeing that anymore. You're seeing colleges and universities start to get rid of their DEI departments. This is a really good step because it's been, I think everyone can look around and say, this was a moral panic, something that countries are prone to, civilizations are prone to, and it's time to end it.
Love the fact that you're name checking David Azarad, our friend from Claremont, and he's a professor at Hillsdale. You can look him up online, and he's got some great stuff about the right not fighting and the right is fighting. And, I'm going to leave you with this, though. You notice I shaved, unlike some hippies around here that I'm looking at in the camera. I'm just going to judge you now.
I am basically a hippie. I need a haircut too.
You are basically a hippie. The last thing that I thought of, I could only hear of Kevin McAllister going, "I'm not afraid." Do you hear me? I'm not afraid. So in the Christmas
A
spirit,
Christmas classic.
that is what we will leave you with. We'll see you again here later this week, Bedford.
See you tomorrow.
When we come back, we'll unpack what Tom Homan's deportation declaration is in Chicago, just ahead. When you open a gold IRA with Birch Gold Group, you get a free silver coin shipped directly to your house. Now that's right. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's the time of the year when Birch Gold gives away free silver American Eagle coins for every $5,000 purchased. And the best part is, you don't have to pay a penny out of pocket. By November 20th, or December 20th, I should say, know what month it is, simply convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals, and Birch Gold will send you your free silver coins directly to your home. Now, you might be thinking, why do I need to diversify into gold? My guy's heading to DC. Things are pretty good here. But the facts are that the administration is trying to put a dent into a $36 trillion national debt in just 4 years. And that's like a mouse trying to stop a freight train. We can't even afford to pay the interest on the debt, let alone the principal. So better to be safe than sorry and take action now to protect your savings. Text the word Jill to 989898 for your free info kit on gold and claim your eligibility for free silver on your purchase from Birch Gold. But you must do this by December 20th. Again, text Jill to the number 989898 for peace of mind that's going to last longer than 4 years. How will the incoming Trump administration handle sanctuary cities that refuse to comply with its deportation policy? Trump's future border czar gave us an idea while speaking in deep blue Chicago. And here to break it down for us is Blaze News reporter Andrew Chapados. And he wrote about this for theblaze.com. And Andrew, I mean, what does this say about the incoming administration and what they're willing to do with cities that are resistant to its policies?
Well, I think all they're really willing to do is follow the laws that are already on the books. I, for one, think it's a really good, normal idea to say if one of these mayors wants to break federal laws, then they should probably be sought out for prosecution in some way, shape, or form, or at least negotiated with. But what the mayor of Chicago and Governor Pritzker are saying is they don't really want anything to do with it. And they like to mix up the words. They always say, the migrant community or the immigrant community, when obviously this is specifically going after illegal immigrants. And it was really funny. What was said about this was because if they don't let them go after these criminal illegal aliens, then they said they're going to end up finding the people who aren't already wanted for extra crimes outside of already entering the country illegally. So it might end up being worse off for the Democrats in these cities and states than they had already anticipated if they don't cooperate.
I mean, what do you think happens if they don't resist exactly? Imagine this scenario is playing out, right? Because the left has had all movies about Civil War, happening in America, etc. And the beautiful thing about American federalism, right, is that then it flips, and all of a sudden you become a federalist. How do you particularly see this playing out?
I think what will end up happening is if there is enough pressure in some of these cities, then they will have to face their own police force and their own citizens asking why aren't we doing this, especially in a place in Chicago where illegal immigrants are sleeping in the airport and they've literally run out of aid for them at taxpayers' expense and run out of room in tent cities for them. I think you're going to start to see people actually rising up in a sense, in a peaceful sense, where they're complaining and saying, why don't you want these people out of our city when we have to pay for them? It might be harder to find people in a place like New York City, but I think in Chicago, where they have faced resistance from their own population in multiple boroughs, it's going to be hard for them to just say, we don't want anybody taken out of here. So what I really think is going to happen is they're going to come to some sort of agreement with the federal government about getting the worst criminals out there, that is people who have multiple convictions for robbery or murder or what have you, and those people will be handed over quietly, but still handed over in the end. But I still think that there's going to be, you can't go after all of them. They're all, not tax-paying loving people, but you can't say tax-paying. But they're still going to try to defend them as long as they haven't committed any extra crimes, let's say. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's pretty amusing stuff. In fact, I have a friend who says he wants the government to lay off the blue states completely in the beginning, just clean out the red states, just to increase the pressure in those places, right? Where before you leave the country, you're probably going to go to one of those sanctuary cities. And he's just relishing that happening, like, please let it happen. So because he suspects, as you do, that the response from people, right, people are done with it, and they don't want to see it anymore. I wonder if we can move to your shirt.
He's a football guy. Football guy for what?
Oh, it's just generic. I'm a generic football fan.
There it is.
If football is on the screen, then I will probably watch it. I watched The Simpsons Monday Night Football last night for about an hour. I don't know why they did that. I don't know who exactly has the appetite for all of that, but I'm still watching it. When I turned it on, I heard Krusty the Clown has already hit a 38-yard field goal tonight. I was pretty down to see what else was going to happen.
Well, I love it, and I wanted to take it into sports as well, because now it seems like everybody is on board with Donald Trump these days, where they weren't a few years ago, but now everybody's on the bandwagon, and you can include the president of the Olympic Committee in that. He was bashing Donald Trump back in 2017, but now he's saying, oh, I have all these confidence in Donald Trump for the games in 2028. So I know that you wrote about this. Can you dive into this a little bit more and just let us know what he was saying initially back in 2017?
In 2017, he had a meeting with Trump at the White House where I guess they had some sort of disagreement on how to handle the Olympics, and he was heard on his cell phone. Of course, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's confirmed that he said, pray for our world, as in, I took it as Donald Trump's going to destroy the world, the old rhetoric of that. But now we fast forward 7 years later, and Trump's going to be the president again, and the Olympics are actually going to be in Los Angeles under his term. And now they're saying, we knew all along that Trump loved us. We always thought that Trump cared about the Olympics. He's such a swell guy, and we're not worried at all. We got to talk to his transition team. And it's like, we know what's happening here. You know that you're going to have to play ball, or Trump's going to make it a living hell for you, especially in Los Angeles, where he's going to want to specifically make it super American, super patriotic. And he has the ability now to make it a rough go for these people. Now, I also want to point out that in the same press conference they had, the Olympic Committee, they were bragging about how many people watched the last Olympics, the Paris ones, but no mention of how they made fun of the Last Supper, no mention of the multiple men that were fighting in women's boxing, no mention of that. It's just, we got record viewership, so it really shows you what they're after. We don't care if men are beating up women in our sport, as long as we get that viewership. That's all that matters.
Andrew, we're going to clean it up this time, okay? We're going to make sure that the Olympics are going to be great again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
And Matthew, I have everything behind me thinking that Donald Trump is actually going to do this, because we aren't even at the 250th birthday of America, and he is already planning our great party that's going to be in my home state of Iowa.
No, look, I mean, it's very true. Andrew is saying that the Olympics, people sense that Trump is this figure who's going to usher in a celebration of greatness and excellence. And he's been talking about this from the beginning. He was talking about this sort of thing actually in his last term. I mean, so this is real. This is going to happen, and you can tell that everyone's excited about it.
The vibes are shifting, Peterson.
Indeed.
They really are. Don't go anywhere. Our next guest will highlight what the Trump administration needs to do to fix America's military. Next. A nuclear blast devastates Los Angeles, throwing the nation into chaos in Angel Studios' upcoming film, Homestead. You can see it in theaters December 20th. Amid the chaos, an ex-Green Beret joins the prepper compound, and From there, love grows, truths arise, and a community unites. Now, this movie is packed with heart-pounding tension, all the dilemma, and a story that cuts to the core of what it means to survive. Homestead explores the humanity behind the apocalypse, and you can pre-order your tickets now for a chance to win a $300,000 giveaway, which includes a whole Bitcoin, a fully furnished tiny house from Box House, and a custom Polaris OHV by Sparks Motors, and everything else that you'll need to start your homestead. Pre-order your tickets for a chance to win at angel.com/Jill. That's angel.com/Jill, and we'll see you in theaters this Christmas season. With Donald Trump's recent nomination of Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, how will his administration reform the military? The Atlantic recently criticized Hegseth's views on women in combat roles. Will this be the left's policy proposal to fix the recruitment crisis? Here to discuss is Mary Rooke. She's the author of the Daily Caller column, and she recently wrote about this. So, Mary, thanks for joining us here again. And again, we're going to take this with a grain of salt. It's the Atlantic. They're talking about Hegseth. But what were your initial thoughts on this?
You know, I think I wrote in my piece something like the Atlantic is a leftist rag if there ever was one. It's not something that you should really take seriously. If it was still in print, you should put it in your cat's litter box. However, I think that this does show the left's disconnect with America and what we need in order to survive and be protected. One of the issues here is that they really want you to believe that men and women are the same. And I know we talked about this last time I was on about the differences between the sexes. But the thing that I wanted to make most clear is that men are most capable for military service, specifically in the combat role, because they are stronger, they are faster, and they have a better head for violence than we do. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It's not something that we should, steer away from or be ashamed of. It's something that we should embrace as a culture because it's what every successful culture in the past has obviously embraced. And I think that what we've seen right now is the left's taking over of these traditional institutions in order to remake them in their own image and kind of kick out the things that have worked in the past. So when you see things like the dumbing down of standards in order to be able to bring women up to the front line, and then the obvious complications that come from that, and then they kind of want to ignore it and be like, oh, well, that's a one-off thing. No, that's an actual problem and we need to fix it. And I think Pete Hegseth is going to be a great pick in order to be able to flush those kind of bad ideologies out and help us regain that mastery of military command.
Mary, it's strange how quickly, in a way, these things have changed, because it really is within living memory. You don't have to be that old to remember a time when there was a lot of Hollywood work went into making people think that men and women were similar in these ways. I mean, remember when G.I. Jane was a thing, right? Yeah. It was very controversial that you had this, and now it's sort of a trope. And I wonder, maybe I'm going too far in this, but I almost feel like something has almost run its course, because I know you do see a lot of young men online sort of laughing about this, and I don't know. Is this a blip that a society pretends men and women are the same, and therefore they both are in combat the same? Do you think this is a longer deal?
No, I think it's a blip. I think that we've run its course now. I think there have been so many men that have served in these, forever wars, that they've had plenty of experience from it. I mean, if you listen to the podcast Heard Around the World that got him, infamously in trouble, the one with Sean Ryan, where he talks about this, and he says that he's talked to generals and privates and everybody in between. How was your service? How did this affect you, when you were over there in combat? And each one of them said how it affected them, in a negative way, how it hurt military readiness. All these things are coming to a head now. And I think it's actually great. It's one of those moments, again, that we should be thankful that the Republicans won so much in November, because without them winning like that, we would now be, ignoring it and kind of pushing forward with this woke ideology. But what we get in turn is someone hoping to come in and sweep all of the dust out from under the rug and then getting it out of our military.
Yeah, we've been talking about Senator Joni Ernst on the program for the last few days. And without that gigantic victory, the mandate that came along with Donald Trump's victory, we would be having completely different conversations. But I want to talk to you about the ideology that you're talking about Pete Hegseth potentially bringing in with him, because I think it's so important, because for I don't know how many years now, but if you are a 16 or 17-year-old boy in middle America and you like to shoot guns and you're masculine, the military was not where you were going to go because of the trajectory that it was on. And, you know, we have all the LGBTQ holidays that are celebrated, right? The Marine bullets. One year on their Instagram were all in rainbow colors. It wasn't dominance by Americans in the military. Is that, again, this is where we hope things will go. How big of an impact and how quickly do you think things could get turned around?
I think it's very quickly. Pete talked about in that podcast about how he would hire the guy that did Top Gun and bring him back around in order to be able to create these recruitment videos that spoke to those men out there in middle America. And I think that is something that is lost on especially the younger generation. Maybe Gen Z doesn't really understand it, but a lot of the guys in my high school were in the military, and a lot of them went over and came back changed. They were a changed man, whether it was PTSD, whether they, lost a limb, whether they were maimed. A lot of things happened over there. And you can talk about whether or not the military command was doing its job when they were over there, but at least they came back with a sense of pride in the military. And I think that now my family has served in the military in every war America has been in, from the American Revolution on. And so when I look at that, and I always think to myself, if I had a boy, would I let him be in the military? I have 4 girls, and so I don't think that's going to be the path for any of them. However, if I had a boy, what would I do? Would I tell him to go in? And I think my answer right now would be, if the military stays as it is today, the answer would be absolutely not. It is a toxic culture for a normal male who, like you said, likes to hunt, likes to, do masculine things, likes to show his prowess. I don't think that's the place that you put them. I think that, it's almost like a catch-all for the people that don't fit in the rest of society, and that's not where they should be. And I also want to go back to some of these, military recruitment videos of the past where they mainly showed women. And it was like, look how strong our women are. And you want to fight Russia, and Russia's looking at this video of this woman, barely climbing up a ropes course. And you think that that's going to deter them from trying to, start nuclear war around the world? Absolutely not. And then, recently over the last, I think it was 2 years ago, the Marines came out with this great recruitment video. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, finally, we're getting back to military readiness. We're going to get back to military command. And then what happens? You go on social media and it's like, happy Trans Visibility Day, let's celebrate June, the month of Pride. And it's all these things that have nothing to do with military readiness and everything to do with taking a knee for this ideology that we have to get out of there.
So a lot of people are going to say, if they're watching, well, okay, because this is shocking right now. You're shocking for a lot of people when you say this kind of thing, because in polite society, we're supposed to pretend that everyone is the same. But I think a lot of people would say, well, where do you draw the line? When it's okay and when it's not okay? Should all women not be in the military? Are you talking about combat? Do you have some kind of principle or way in which you think about this?
It's funny because my husband and I were just talking about this. He said, would you let the girls join the military? And I think that an appropriate position for them would be like the med service. I have no issue with that. I think combat is not a place for women. I think that not only does it bring complications to have women in combat roles with men, but also I think that it is a detriment to that woman. You're telling her you are just the same as a man and you need to go out there and you need to do these things that men are traditionally made to do, and you can do them well. And then she finds herself in a situation where she is not equipped to handle it, and that puts her in danger. And I do not think that that is where we need to be. And I think that while these conversations are shocking, they're important. They are so important to teach our girls that, listen, you may not be able to carry this 70-pound rucksack, with your rifle and your boots all the way across the Afghan desert. But what you can do is this, this, and this. And, you're a beautiful communicator and you do these great things. You're a leader in your own right. Doesn't have to be in the military, especially doesn't have to be in combat roles. And so I think that the line in the sand would be combat roles, especially if you're doing what we do now, which is dumbing down the, the requirements to be able to be in these roles. And what that means, It's the same thing as when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion in college. And you're saying, like, I want a certain number of people in this college class that look this way. We're not going to take the best. We're just looking at characteristics. And if you're doing that in the military, it's not only harmful for our national security, but it's harmful for the people that are not ready to be in those roles. And so I think that's something that we have to really talk about. And sorry if I'm shocking you a little bit, but it's important.
We're not.
You're not shocking us.
And the military as it stands right now, we can out-pronoun anyone
Yeah.
around the world. Mary, thanks so much for coming in.
Absolutely.
I always enjoy this discussion.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
When we come back, there is a grisly murder that has created a hotbed of memes online. We'll explain coming up. There's a lot to unpack tonight in the case of Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Earlier today, Mangione was denied bail in a Pennsylvania courtroom. As he entered the courtroom, he didn't hold back. He was shouting things like, "It's completely out of touch," and an insult to the intelligence of the American people, and "it's a lived experience." Mangione was arrested on Monday at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania after an employee called the police. Authorities said he had multiple fake IDs and a 3D printed gun with a suppressor. Now, the culture being where it is today, in the midst of this tragedy, the memes have been rolling in. So here to discuss the cultural side of this news story is Logan Hall. He's Blaze Media's digital strategist and meme expert. And Logan, I will say, everyone seems to be talking about Luigi right now. What do you think it is about him and this case that has just grabbed the attention of the nation?
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't really see this sort of crazy street violence where somebody just goes up to a big CEO of a big company and just guns them down in broad daylight. So I think that part of the aspect, part of it too, is that the news cycle has been kind of slower since Trump, since the election. So this is sort of what people glommed onto since it's been a little bit slower. But obviously that video was very shocking. And now with news of the suspect being caught and his social media, everyone just went crazy for it yesterday.
So we should say, I mean, leading into this and looking at, what people are joking around about in a very dark case online.
Yes.
I think part of it is because it's hard to tell what the hell's going on a lot these days. And when you look at this case, we got a guy who gunned someone down and, in broad daylight, as it were, right? I mean,
And the Monopoly money in the bag.
Monopoly money in the
Central
bag.
Park.
So you get this thing where you go, am I in a movie? Does this guy think he's in a movie?
Yeah.
Is someone making a movie? What's real here? And so I think there's an aspect of this, and then you're going to get into this, and then this sort of strange persona that he is, right? Who is very online. That just makes for a lot of jokes to sort of get us through this.
Yes.
And some very bizarre humor.
Yeah, the memes are very good. I think we're going to get to those soon. But yeah, it was. Well, part of it too was that a lot of these people, the internet, Elon likes to say you are the media now. So we have all of these internet sleuths that come on and try to give their own take or see, try to piece the puzzle together and say this is what this is what happened. Here's why I am right. Here's my theory. And so you have tens of thousands of people who are doing this, and then at the same time, you have his own social media, which surfaces, and it is bizarre. Like Matt said, he's following like RFK, AOC, Joe Rogan, Richard Dawson. So just like sort of a weird amalgamation of all these different types of accounts. And people are trying to understand, what drove him to this? What was his actual ideology? What were his political beliefs? And they seem to be a little bit all over the place. You can't really pin it down. And that adds further suspicion to this whole mystery.
We should say that from the very beginning, Jill and I were talking about this earlier, what the first thing that happens is people see the picture. Maybe particularly women see the picture,
yes,
and they want to see more pictures.
Well, that leads very well into the first meme, because the first one is all about him flirting.
Yes. Yeah. So do we have the first one?
It says, like a true Italian, Luigi Mangione's fatal error as an assassin was giving himself away by stopping to flirt with the cashier at the cafe before going to work.
Yeah, so this is this is a really viral tweet from one of my mutual friends. I follow him, and I actually told him I'd be giving him a shout out on this this program with that. But yeah, it is sort of a classic Italian kind of trope that they like a charming woman, and I have a buddy. I actually have a former roommate who is an Italian, and they look, eerily similar. I was kind of joking about that with him. I was joking about that with him, but yeah, the Italians, they do love a charming woman, and they like to smile at them.
They do. Now you have another one that's sued by Nintendo. It says, "I'm sorry, kid, you're getting sued too." And it says by the CEO's family, and it says no, by Nintendo. They said legally you can't be called Luigi.
So that one was great too. That's a joke about for those who don't know, Mario and Luigi are popular Nintendo
And the lawyer from
franchise.
Better Call Saul.
And that's the lawyer from Better Call Saul on the left. So yeah, a lot of we've been getting a lot of good Mario jokes. Somebody said Luigi was really upset that his brother Mario couldn't get healthcare because he was attacked by a turtle.
It's so strange because not only do we have all of these memes, Logan, but we also see like lookalike contests in New York now. Like his jacket that he was wearing, people have found the jacket online, and that is selling like crazy. Mm-hmm. What kind of world are we living in, Logan?
It's a pretty crazy one. He's already got, I think, something like 300,000 Twitter followers or X followers. Somebody said, get 300,000 followers with this one easy trick. But I think it's it's a crazy world, and it's a crazy news cycle, and people just really were jumped on this news story.
Well, let's talk a little bit about why we think that is, because I think there's something going on here, right? There's more than going on the meets the eye, because again, it's just a very strange story. It's a very strange thing that happened. It signals both, sort of what happens in third world countries, where you gun down, CEOs and powerful figures in the middle of the street. It comes after these 2 assassination attempts, and then this strange guy is at the middle of it. I feel like my 2 cents is, and I want to know what you guys think. My 2 cents is just, there's something about like the American people sort of fumbling their way towards reality. Yeah. Like we're joking about it because it's just hard to know what's real. Yeah. There's something in there happening here. Do you think that's right?
That is part of the issue with our digital environment, is that, and with how much the media lies, is that people, not Blaze News Tonight, but legacy media, is that people don't really know what to trust. And so it sometimes drives the social media, that's sort of the craziness of what social media does to people. I saw a great point made yesterday that we have all this information about the alleged shooter in this case, and zero information.
Our own Matthew Peterson put this out.
Yes, and zero information about the attempted assassinations or the attempted assassins of Trump, which is very, very strange.
Yeah, tell me what you know about Thomas Crooks.
Yeah.
And then we have Luigi's every single movement, every single thing. These are the books that he liked to read. Mm-hmm. We know so much information.
Well, so people will respond to that by saying, they responded to that tweet by saying, oh, well, he was just more online. And my actual tweet was, it seems like, notice that it feels like we know more about this guy in a very short period of time than we learned about those 2 assassins. Yep. And part of it is because
you could find some online footprint by now.
Yes, and there was an online footprint for those guys. I mean, granted, the second one we knew something about, but with this guy, he was very online, which then makes people suspicious. Do we know that he's the one who committed the crime? There's already people talking about, is he a cutout, right?
Yeah. There are a lot of theories going out there right now that, he was a fall guy, or he wasn't the actual assassin, that somebody else wanted the healthcare CEO dead, and it was, sort of a deep state operation. Yeah. Who knows? There is a lot of weird facts about this, though. Like, why was he at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania with multiple fake IDs and the murder weapon? Right. I mean, if he's supposed to be this genius assassin, I don't know why he would be there at that McDonald's with the gun.
I have been to the McDonald's in Altoona, and I did not have a gun with me.
Yeah,
you wouldn't still be carrying the weapon around. Like, nobody is that dumb, even if you're not the top guy that could ever conceive of something.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. You wouldn't do that. Yeah. Logan, well, thanks for trying to make some sense out of this story, because it's 2024. We need Donald Trump to get back in the White House in 2025, and some sense of normalcy to come back. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show right after this. The countdown is on until January 20th, but it already looks like Donald Trump is the leader of the world. He's back on the world stage. He's shaking hands, taking names, and making sure that that everything will eventually be right in the world again. Matthew?
It is bizarre how quickly he just became president, right? I mean, there was no inauguration because there's just a black hole on the other side of this, and he's just making the rules.
Yeah, and talking with Bedford, it is clear that there's nobody left there to run the establishment anymore. And again, we've been talking about Senator Joni Ernst for a couple days here on this program, but also you look at the left side of things, and Joe Biden's not there. AOC is even removing the pronouns in her bio. Like, what's going on the left right now?
Yeah, so you'd have to say the right-leaning establishment was already second-class citizens. They were already losers, to put it mildly, right? I mean, you know that, Turtle Man in the Senate, McConnell, grand old guy, but he's not in charge of anything, right?
And he fell down today.
These people are in bad shape. So at least it was, the Democrats rule things, right? The Democratic establishment rules things. Oh, Barack Obama's a moderate, see, and this is actually the elite position that you should have. And now those people are discredited and they're all out of power, and there is no one in the establishment who's in charge of anything. There's no leadership there. Not Mitt Romney, not Barack Obama. There's nothing. And in the midst of this is a great, beautiful frontier opening up, and Donald J. Trump starting to act as president, whether he's inaugurated or not.
Mitt Romney giving his farewell address. It's the old, like, if a tree falls in the woods deal. Is there anything left?
No, I mean, you think about this culturally too, right? It's as if the emperor wears no clothes now for real, and no one even cares. They're just turning away and they're looking for something new and something different.
Well, in our conversation with Mary Rooke today will be one of the more important things that they could possibly get done, which is remaking the military. And that, with Pete Hegseth, hopefully will be, the Secretary of Defense, that could not be of a higher importance at this moment in history.
Yeah, I mean, it's about excellence, right? Like she said, it's about military readiness, as she says in her piece. And people are excellent in different ways, and they have different qualities. The fact that we have to talk about this, right, or like go reverse psyop a generation of people who watched movies that showed you, lies about male and female bodies, that maybe even that led to the craziness we see now. It's just kind of ridiculous, right? It shouldn't be offensive to anybody, in my mind. It should be just realism.
No, I've been reliably assured, though, that men can have babies. So I don't know. Maybe we can address that first,
no,
and then
exactly.
we can get things back on track.
That's exactly right.
Be sure to go subscribe to Blaze News Tonight on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to rate and review the show. It helps everybody else to find it. And we'll be back without whatever crazy news we're going to get here tomorrow night.